In this video, let's do a couple of problems where we try to figure out if a function is even or odd. So let's let f be a function. We can say that f is even if f of negative x is equal to f of x. Likewise, we can say f is odd if f of negative x is equal to negative f of x. That's the general concept here. Now, if neither of these two things happened, you guessed it, it's neither even or odd. It's neither one. Let's take a look at a few examples of this. Okay, here in A we have f of x is equal to x to the fourth plus 2. The first thing we always want to do is plug in negative x for x. So we need to figure out what is f of negative x. This means plug negative x everywhere we see an x, so we'll do that. Now, when we're doing this and the exponent is even, that's like saying negative x times negative x times negative x times negative x. We're multiplying negative x to itself 4 times. In doing so, the negative sign will drop. It will be positive. So in general, anytime this exponent is an even number and we have a negative in here, it becomes positive again. So we can write this as x to the fourth plus 2. Nothing happened here to the 2. Now if we look at this, when we plugged in f of negative x, what did we get back? Well, we got back exactly what f of x was. So this here shows that f of negative x is equal to f of x. Because of this, and based on the definition, we can say that this function is even. Alright, let's take a look here. Doing the same process as before, we're going to find f of negative x here. So I'm going to plug negative x everywhere I see an x. Okay, in doing this, we got to check our negative signs and see what happens here. Okay, now we have a negative x to the fifth. Since this is odd, we're going to keep this negative sign. So this is going to be negative x to the fifth. And the same applies here. We're going to keep this negative sign because that's an odd exponent as well. But remember, there was already a negative sign there. So a negative with another negative, that's going to give us positive x cubed. Now, a good idea to do here is when you see a negative out here like this, we're going to go ahead and factor this negative out. And when we do so, we get negative x to the fifth minus x cubed. Now, when we did that, what happened was, if we notice, this is here is f of x. Well, so is this inside there. So this is technically saying negative f of x. So what we've shown here is that f of negative x is equal to negative f of x. And by definition of this, we can say that this is odd. Now, we're going to look at one more example, but before we do, remember, it is possible that it's neither, and it's not even, and it's not odd. And in those cases, we would say it's neither. And I'm not going to do an example of that one, but basically, if when you plug in negative x, you don't get f of x or you don't get negative f of x, you would put neither there. All right, so we have ourselves another function here. This one is a rational function. And the reason I chose this one is important because a lot of students like to think that since all the exponents are odd, oh, this answer should be odd. Well, why don't we put your answer as your guess if that's what you think it's going to be? Let's put that there. A lot of students say that. They say, oh, when it's odd exponents, it's odd. So let's check this out. We know what we need to do first. We need to plug in negative x. Okay, now that that's done, let's take care of these negative signs and see what happens to them. Well, as stated earlier, all of these exponents are odd, which means we're going to keep this negative sign. So in the top part, we would have or in the numerator, we would have negative 3x cubed. And we would have minus x over, this is going to be minus 6x to the fifth. And we have a minus here and another minus, so that's now plus. Remember, we're doing this because the exponents are odd. If they were even, we would do something different. Now, as I said in the last example, we want to factor these negatives out. Let's do that over here. I'm going to take a negative out of this. That leaves me with 3x cubed plus x. And we're going to take a negative out of this bottom one. And this leaves me with 6x to the fifth minus x cubed. Now let's look at this carefully. This part here looks exactly like this. So this looks like f of x. But I have a negative over a negative, which means that's going to become positive. So this becomes just 3x cubed plus x over 6x to the fifth minus x cubed. Now what does that show us? That shows us that when I plug in negative x, what do I get back? I get back f of x. And if you recall, when f of negative x is equal to f of x, that means we have ourselves something that's even. So be sure to carefully investigate these problems and check out the negative signs. All right, it's possible that these will be odd, and it's possible that it's neither. That could happen too. So here was a few examples on determining if a function is even or odd.